Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Joanne Charisma, and for those who doesn't know, I'm the founder of Beyond the Abuse. Beyond the Abuse was I'm gonna go over it, and for those who are not familiar with the organization, we've been working since 2016 to bring awareness on domestic violence and provide hope, empowerment, and support to the victim. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you this afternoon to our 2021 Stop Domestic Violence Conference. I am very grateful for everybody who helped put together this event. And as most of you probably aware, since the pandemic started, um, especially here in New York, we have seen an increased amount of violence all across the state, and it's mostly due because the people had to stay home with their partners, and they didn't have to work, they didn't have to go to the regular activity that they used to go to. So and we know, like, we had an increase of 12% of partner victimization, and has in April last year, the state has launched a domestic violence hotline and a new text program for the victim. Now you can call 800-942-6906, or you can text 844-997-2121 and chat to with some professional who will bring you help, and and kind of direct you to some safer environment. So today, the speakers going to talk to us about their experiences and bring some light on the subject. And I hope this going to bring some light to other people who are not too familiar with the event, the subject. Sorry, and also if anybody who's listening is finding themselves in a similar situation, that will bring them some awareness and direction on what to do next. And we are also eager to hear from everybody who's participating. So if you have questions or concerns, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll go through them as we progress during the event. And once again, I want to thank everybody for your presence and your participation. And I sincerely hope that we'll enjoy listening to our speakers. We'll have a great debate, and we'll have a great time together. And also, I want to thank our board members. Not all of them were able to join us today, but they all help in putting together this event. So without further ado, we're gonna start. First of all, I'm going to launch a poll. It's strictly confidential. It's kind of to get you into the event, and at the end we'll go through the result. But like I mentioned, it's going to be confidential. You don't have to put your name. It's just to bring awareness on how more closer we are than we think. So we'll take about 5 minutes for the poll, and we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Please leave your message.
Hi, Joanne, are you there?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, sorry, Terry. I just realized I'm the wrong one. Okay, sorry about that.
It's all right.
Okay.
For a second, I wondered.
Thank you so much. Okay. So now we're going to welcome our speakers. I'm going to let them introduce themselves individually. So we're going to start with Terry. Hi, Terry.
Hi.
You want to talk
Sure.
to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. My name is Terry Shaw. I'm an inspirational speaker, spiritual teacher, and author. My very first book was a co-authored book called Lessons from My Grandmother's Lap, along with powerful women in Atlanta who I had the opportunity to work with, sharing their experience, how they've learned from their grandmothers and how they've taken that into their life experiences. I'm also a self-published author of The Power of ABCs, which you can find on Amazon.com, and also my website, Terry Shaw Inspires. This is part of my purpose work where I interact with different people, finding different ways about how they can progress in life and how they can find ways to improve themselves, especially internally, because a lot of our inner world has a lot to do with our external world. And once we start working there, things can definitely transform for us. On the side, I'm a mathematician, also working at the healthcare institution, working with doctors and scientists, solving cancer. So I'm very excited to, be here and just be able to speak. Thank you so much, Joanne, for having me once again, because I was here last year. And that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Terry, for joining us today. Next, we're going to hear from Mr. Tommy Dudley.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tommy Dudley II. I am a two-time male survivor of domestic violence, and I'm an advocate. I also advocate for parental alienation. I am a scoliosis, spinal fusion survivor as well, so I advocate for that as well. I have a group called Pass for Gentlemen, which means purple's always standing tall for gentlemen. It's a group where I feel like males can come and express what they're dealing with as far as with DV. I also make sure that everyone is all the sisters and the brothers of domestic violence, the survivors, that they can come together and kind of network and link on my page as well. So I put all the events on there, whatever is going on, that sort of thing. I've been speaking since 2016, and I was in a DV situation back home in Dallas, Texas, as well as in Seattle, Tacoma. So it was actually two different states, two different women. And I can also, let you know about the parental alienation a little later on, what that entails as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm just an advocate, trying to get the spread the word out here, get the awareness for males as well, and make sure more males come forward in this fight against domestic violence.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Tommy. Now we're going to hear from Christina Brown.
Afternoon. I'm Christina Brown. I'm a nurse and survivor of domestic violence. I have started out as with being a nurse, a patient advocate. And I have recently started to tell my story, and which is what brought me here today, just to try and make others feel comfortable with coming out and not feel ashamed, and just promote, awareness of the different forms, no matter what it is. So, and that's really it. Hey.
And thank you so much for joining us. And our last speaker is Gabiernaud Beaudin.
Hi, my name is Gabiernaud Beaudin. I've been working in this past 3 years as a team leader in the sales department. Much of my job is to coach, mentoring, make sure that all the agents is doing what they're supposed to do to follow the company goal. So, yeah, that's it.
Once again, thank you to our speakers for joining us. Now we're gonna dive right in. So my first question to the panelists is goes as follows. Did you grow up in a violent home? And we don't have a specific order, so yeah.
Yeah, I will start and say yes, I did. I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica. And for those of you who are very familiar or you've seen the beautiful pictures, the touristy side of Jamaica, but then there's the true realistic side, the ghettos of Kingston, where you're constantly seen as a child, different situations of domestic abuse. I've seen situations where men were beating their pregnant women with machetes, the blunt end of the machete. But of course, that could inflict harm on anyone. I myself have been, as a child, been abused by adults, when things were not done properly or things were not taken care of the way it needed to be taken care of. As a child, you don't know what's going on, but it's okay to hit a child because that's just the mentality we grew up on. This is the way a child will learn, if you continually hit them so that it finally sinks in. So yes, most definitely I've seen it, in my childhood, experienced it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk now. So for me, it's like you don't really know what domestic violence is, because as a child getting getting beat because you cannot do math for us is like, okay, I'm getting beat anyway. I don't pass, they're gonna beat me. You don't really understand or see it as domestic violence. But when you grow up and you're seeing different things, some people, they have some issue on their head, they cannot learn properly, and then grow up, your parent doesn't really understand what's going on. For them, you have to, it's because you don't study well. Beating you was the easiest part to see. If they beat you, you will learn. So I've been seeing that around a lot with family. But growing up, I usually see different things, like a woman will get beat because the food that she cooked was not the one that the husband want. I also have a close family, like my cousin from my mom's side. I remember he used to beat his wife for basic things like, that's not the food that I want. You went to the church when I told you not to, you get beat. So basic things, I was like, and especially me growing up, I never see my mom and my dad having those kind of issues. But for me, it was like something that's not normal.
Yeah.
Christina?
Okay, so I didn't grow up in a house with where I saw abuse. By the time I was really young when my parents separated, and my mom was in an abusive relationship, so I saw the after effect of her just trying to struggle with coping with that abuse and trying to get her life back together. And back then it wasn't really common. So after she left, and we lived in a little 1-bedroom apartment. Things weren't easy, and she didn't fully deal with it for maybe about 10 years. So it's hard to see somebody be so who's such a great person be so beat down after getting out of something like that. And I didn't fully understand, obviously, until I was older. But my sister who was much older than me, did witness it. So yeah, that's what I dealt with.
Tommy?
I actually did grow up in an abusive home. As a child, you didn't know that it was abuse. You just thought mama and daddy would fight. Um, I remember, back then thinking that it was my dad because that's what my mom said, and my dad was the problem. I remember my mom's family coming over to fight my dad. Um, Later, as an adult now, I talked to my sister about it, and my daddy never really put his hands on my mom. She was she was always the antagonist. She was a true definition of hurt people, which still doesn't make it right. But I didn't find out till later on that my mom had been through um, rapes and molestations and the abuse that she endured as a child back in the 50s and 60s. But I knew she fought all the time. She would fight anybody. So, that's what I saw from her, and that she held grudges and she didn't forgive easily. And that's kind of what she taught me and my sister. Um, my dad did, end up getting tired of it because he was the breadwinner. He paid all the bills, did everything in the house. So he got sick of it. He told her she had to leave. So she really didn't have anywhere to go. That's scary as a child, as a third, fourth grader. My sister's like a fifth grader, having to make the decision of whether you're gonna stay with your dad or you're gonna stay with your mom. Um, we ended up having to go to a shelter, the Salvation Army, and we went to several shelters in the Dallas Fort Worth area, probably at least four. And till my mom got back on her feet with governmental assistance, Section 8, HUD, all that stuff. But she kind of made my sister like hate my dad. I always was close with my dad. Um, but then, just realizing now, like I said, as an adult, and also being a two-time survivor and dealing with domestic violence from a female, from an ex-wife and a girlfriend, I see some of the same things that my dad had to deal with within myself. So I can kind of see that, man, I'm all these years I'm thinking it was him, and it was really my mom. My dad, everyone thinks because my dad was a drill sergeant, he was hard on us and all this other stuff. My dad was so laid back, not really a care in the world. My mom, on the other hand, was more aggressive, more angry. She was quick to fight, quick to jump. She quick to jump at us. It was more of a verbal thing with us, but we did get spankings, we did get whoopings, but it was more of a verbal thing. And it's a lot of stuff that me and my sister are having to unlearn at the age of 40 and 42 now that we learned from my mom. Because, it wasn't right what she was teaching us. And it has affected me and my sister's relationships. My sister is a DV survivor as well, you know, two-time survivor, and I'm a two-time survivor. So it's like we whatever we got, whatever we saw with her back in the 80s and 90s, it's trickled over into, this 21st century, and, we're dealing with it now. So, yeah, to answer your question, I did see it growing up in the household, and it did affect me in my adult life.
We know that every about 9.7% of women and 2.9 of men have been stalked or have been exposed to domestic violence in their lifetime. So that's mostly why I wanted to ask that question. So we're gonna move to the next question. Um, when you looking back to your relationship, can you kind of walk us through it, how it is started? Did it started, has it been violent up front, or what were the steps as much as you can remember?
I mean, I can speak for that. So initially for me, it was like the Lauren, like that gingerbread house where Hansel and Gretel, it looks all sweet and nice outside until you end up there and start living in it. You realize there's like an evil monster there. That's kind of how it ended up for me, and I'm sure it has for a lot of people. Once in the beginning, it's the honeymoon phase and everything is smooth sailing, until you finally start to see the true color of that person. And they're just trying to see, you know, how far are you willing to go, you know, based on their personality with you or their attitude with you. And for me personally, when I was in that relationship for 2.5 years, emotionally abusive, and at one point almost, you know, physical abusive. But I think my ancestors came in at some point and said, no, we're not going there today. We're not repeating that cycle. So, you know, that's when I definitely got the strength to like leave and say, okay, this is not helpful. This is not progression. I was only 18 or 19 at the time. Um, I was, you know, I didn't have much, you know, family or female members around me or family around me who would say, you know, I see what's happening here. You know, how can I help you out of this situation? I think it had to get worse where I had to wake up on my own and realize, you know, I got to get out of here. I got to move out and move on from this person because they're abusive, you know, from, you know, telling me that I'm good for nothing or I'm no good. You know, I remember at one point I was attending college and I was told that I can't take certain courses because they're too late at night. And I have to take them at this time because I want you back here in the house at this time. Or one time this person showed up at college just to make sure I was actually in class. You know, the shocker from seeing someone come from Brooklyn all the way to the Manhattan. And it was like, wait, what? You know, this is just signs and signs. And I saw it, but I was so caught up in the idea that this person loved me, or caught up in the idea that I wanted this person to love me. And I want this person to, you know, to care for me, or for them to change to how I wanted them to change to love me. And, you know, when I discovered that was not going to happen, I said, no, we definitely can't do this. The manipulation has to stop. The, you know, the emotional abuse has to stop. And, you know, there was financial abuse as well, where, you know, I would have to give this person money in order to stay where we actually were on the lease together. You know, that was not the agreement when we initially moved in together, but I had to give this person extra money to stay in a lease that was in my name. And it was, you know, these are some of the way the manipulations happen. And that's how you kind of know once you're in that situation. And, you know, once you see it, you know, for some people, they wise up, some don't, unfortunately. And sometimes that's just how it is. Yeah.
So I can speak. For me, we were friends. We went to junior high school together, and we dated for a little while. We broke up because, you know, just being young, and we reconnected in my mid-20s. And he was more of like a wolf in sheep clothing, because, you know, you thought this person, oh, we're friends. Like, you know, I felt really comfortable. So we got married. We joined the military, and we ended up moving across the country to California, where he was stationed. And we were out there for a few years. And that's really where, you know, all the manipulation and the emotional part started to wear me down. Things were great at first, you know, and it was all good. And then eventually, you know, it was the financial things, you know, oh, we can't spend money on this. We need to spend money on that, you know, and here I am, I'm young. I don't really know much about marriage. And I'm following what the Bible is telling me too. Like, you know, my man, the husband's supposed to be head of household, you know, he's supposed to kind of lead. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a little bit of a step back, which was a mistake. Because I am usually very strong and opinionated, but I let this person, because I thought, you know, we had this foundation of friendship and everything, kind of wear me down. And then over the years, you know, being away from family, being away from friends, I didn't see it. You know, his daughter came to live with us, and he would leave his daughter with me. Basically, I was the responsible one for her. He would go out with his friends, he would do whatever, he would disappear. I would be calling him, you know, and he would just be like, well, I'm with my friends, like I need a break, I'm working hard, this, that, and the third, you know. And I was working too, and you know, I just kind of let it go, like, oh, I got to pick my battles. And you know, I just let too many things go for so long. And I didn't see how he was controlling and manipulating me. It wasn't until my mom kind of stepped in and was like, you know, she found that these things were kind of off. And it wasn't until I had my son, and he ended up moving away, not moving away, he ended up getting restationed, excuse me, to Korea. And because my son was so young, I was like, I'm not going. And while he was away, that's when it kind of opened my eyes to everything that was going on in our relationship. We did get physical a few times. You know, it's not something, you know, I really speak on a lot, but it did happen. And, you know, I just thought like, you know, you never call the police, you never do these things, because you're just thinking like, oh, we just got escalated, you know, just keep making excuse after excuse. And you really just have to hold the person responsible. At the end of the day, they can't, it's not okay for them to try and, you're supposed to have a relationship where you're both equal and you're both able to come to each other and support each other. And it just really, you know, this person really just over the years broke me down, wore me down. And we were married for about 8 years before, you know, I finally woke up and had to just walk away. And, you know, I just left. So.
Thanks so much, Christina, for sharing.
For me, it's like normally my relationship and every relationship that I have, because of the way I am quiet and everything, they usually tendency of when, because I don't really talk until I need to talk really. So I don't really argue for basic things because I don't feel like we'll have the normal conversation, but when I'm mad, I usually get away, like go on my own, don't talk really. So what usually I experience is usually the verbal abuse. They will use word that I probably never hear sometimes, but that to put me down. And so that's usually what I usually experience. And my last marriage that I have, that one of the things that was common was the verbal abuse. And I sometimes I would be mad, I would say things too, but normally I will let it go because there's no point to go and fight. Because when someone doesn't see that sometimes they made a mistake, there's no point.
I just want to let you know, guys, if at any point you need a break, just let me know and you'll be excused, because I know doing this myself, I know that can't, like, going back to some stuff can really take a toll on you. So it's okay if you feel like you need a break, just let me know. All right. Next question is, why did you stay? Because I know a lot of people not having any clue of what you endure always get to that point, right? I had it. A lot of people ask me that, my friends, my family member, they told me, if it was that bad, that's bad, why did you stay? Why didn't you leave? So this is my next question to you. Why did you stay?
I can speak since it's kind of going around in a circle. Start with me. So for me, I definitely would have to say I did not feel confident in myself enough to move forward. That's the honest truth. I thought that, I think I said it earlier, that things would change. Like I was living in this fantasy world, this, unrealistic viewpoint of this person, that this is how I see them and this is how I want them to be. And I stayed because I was waiting for that opportunity for them to finally fit into how I wanted them to be. And, once I wised up and said, that's not going to happen, that's when I moved on. But I think for a lot of the times that we stay, because a lot of us are still seeking love outside of ourselves, and we don't understand what love is within. And so when we're insecure, when we have all these fears, like for instance, fear that if you do leave and you were financially supported by this person, how am I going to figure it out? Especially if that person was the breadwinner or whatnot, or if you were both breadwinners, but one made more money than the other, how am I going to survive in this world out there alone? And another thing is that some people don't have other people to talk to open up and express what's really happening, so that they can say, okay, can I come stay with you for a little while? Or, some people do stay and wait for that right opportunity to say, okay, I'm leaving, because I have in the back of my mind, I'm planning and I'm planning and planning and praying and praying, and I'm waiting for that opportunity, and that sign from the universe that says, yes, now is the time. And there are different reasons why people would stay, but for my reason, it was more so insecurity. I just didn't believe love existed outside there. This was the love. This is what I understood it as. This is what I saw growing up. It makes sense in my viewpoint, because that's how I see people treating each other, especially growing up. This is normal, and I normalized it and I stayed. So yeah.
For me, I would say I stayed because I lost my sense of self. I started to blame myself for things. I was depressed, unhappy. I put on a lot of weight, and I was away from my support. I was away from my family. So I stayed because I didn't want to be another statistic either. I don't want to be another divorced couple with being a single mom and doing those things on my own. So I was like, I don't want to just give up on my marriage. Like, maybe we go to counseling, we try and work things out. But that only works if the other person is actually a reasonable person. And he just, of course, he would go, things would be, and then things would be good for a while. He would do something sweet, he would do something nice. And I'm like, oh, okay, things aren't so bad. Maybe we're just in a rough patch. And I just kept lying to myself. And, yeah, and what Terry said is absolutely right. You don't have sometimes if you don't have that support, you don't know where you're gonna go. I was in California, and one time I up and I left, and I just went to my job, and I didn't know what else to do. Sorry. And coming home helped me find that support again, and a lot of prayer and just staying faithful. But when you're in it, it's hard to see a way out. So.
Thanks, Chair.
What I can say really is, like, at the first you don't take that seriously. You think it's something that's gonna happen once or twice. When it's becoming a habit, then you realize that, hey, what's going on? And then when you try to speak up or try to engage it, and then it's become worse. Not because you don't have the strength to leave or everything. You just at the first you just wanna make sure, like, you did everything to make it work first, before you make a decision.
For me, ultimately, it was fear. Um, it was so many reasons that I stayed in both instances. Um, like a few of you have mentioned the financial aspect of it. You have someone there and you both the breadwinners, or one's making more than the other, and it's like, what are you gonna do? I moved all my things from Dallas, Texas, all the way to Seattle, Washington, with no family up here. It's like her entire family was there. And I just moved up on a whim, and then I got a good career at the airline, and it's like I'm stuck. I was depressed as well. The weather is terrible in Seattle, seasonal depression. I was already cut off from all my friends, all the people I knew back home. It's shame. I'm a man. A man's not supposed to be getting abused. A woman's not supposed to be hitting on a man and he take it. So I can't, where I'm from, you don't get hit and take it. I'm from a different neighborhood, and it's like you can't call the cops because then where I'm from, you're a snitch, you're a narc. So being a young Black man, I couldn't call the cops because they weren't gonna believe me, or that's what at least I was taught to believe in society. So I couldn't do that, so I didn't feel any hope, that there was any help. Didn't know anything. There's no domestic violence shelters for men, so where am I gonna go? She has her whole family up against me. People, that were at the hospital, people at the church. So it wasn't just physical. It was very bad physically, the abuse, but it got into spiritual and financial and emotional and all that sort of stuff. It went in a full circle for me in Seattle. Also, I was afraid of not being able to see my daughter. That's where I said the parental alienation comes in at, because if I don't do what you want me to do, if I don't act the way you want me to act, now I don't see my daughter. So I haven't seen my daughter in like 5-6 years, and she collects child support. She collects the stimulus checks. She collects my unemployment. She collected, I just got an accident settlement. That whole thing went to her. I haven't seen an income tax check since 2012. And it's like the courtrooms, they allow them to do that. They allow them to continue to hurt you. And then that's another form of abuse from the courthouse, from the judges and the attorneys and all them. The police don't know how to deal with a DV victim. So they're really no help either. And like I said, as a man, it's a lot of, things that you looking at, you're feeling inadequate, you're feeling weak, the verbal abuse that you're getting from her, you've lost yourself, and it's like, what do you do now? So that's why I say the hope is just gone. So in both instances, that's kind of what it was. I was in a place to where they felt like I needed them and that I would come back. And in Dallas or in Seattle, I was always coming back. Like they say, the cycle, the victim goes and comes 7 or 8 times. I probably did it more than that. Because in my first situation in Seattle, Tacoma, I was in that abusive relationship from 2006 to 2010. And the second one in Dallas was the entire year 2015. So it's a lot of fear and like Miss Terry said, a lot of uncertainty and just your whole for a man, your ego, amongst other things, so that's pretty much why I stayed.
Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. And I want to remind everybody who's listening, if they have any questions, feel free to send it in the chat. My next question to you guys is about the police, right? Did you at any time call the police? Did they get involved? What was your interaction with them and how this ended?
So for me, yes, I did reach out to the police because there was a situation where, as I mentioned before, and for those of you who are now joining in, I was saying that I was living with this person and our names were both on the lease. But this person treated it like it was all the lease, was in their name. So I had no freedom or flexibility to do whatever I want. There was one instance where I was locked out of the house spitefully, and told to sleep in the shed because I didn't listen or I didn't do something that needed to be done. And I think it happened before, maybe 2 or 3 times, where I did end up in that shed and I would cry and everything. But I don't know, there was that one day I got all the strength that I can. I said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And I literally called the police. And, in New York, I live in New York. So, New York law is that someone cannot, even if your name is on the lease or not, they cannot let you out of the house. Basically, if you're living there for over 3 months, I think, or even a couple of weeks, they're physically living there, you have to get them out by order of the court or whatnot. So the police came and, they explained this to him and he was shocked that I called the police. And I sat there with so much power and I said, yes, good for you. I don't know. I felt so empowered just doing that and calling the police because I felt like there wasn't a blame. They didn't necessarily say to me like, oh, why didn't you just go and find a shelter there? They told me my rights about as a tenant living there with this person. And then once they told me this, because I never knew anything about this before, I just decided to call them. It made me start thinking like, what other rights do I have in this situation that I'm living in with this person who made it seem like I'm so dumb and I'm so stupid. Like I don't have the brains, or the brawn to call the police because they were quite shocked when I did so. And so, the police in that scenario did help me. But I can tell you another scenario where I ended up in a separate relationship where the police did not help me. So I had to help myself. After that relationship, I ended up in a very similar relationship where this one was more physical. Glass were breaking, walls were being punched and whatnot, these things. And I called the police and the police basically said, well, you're pretty stupid for letting this person live with you. And I felt so ashamed, embarrassed. But then I said, you know what? You know what to do. There is no need. If the law enforcement can't help you, then the only way is for you to help yourself. I could pray all I want, because prayer does owe so much to a certain degree. But when you start putting action into motion and do certain things, then that's when change really happens. So, for me, one case, the police helped, told me what my rights were, what cannot happen, what he cannot do. In another situation, the police say, no, I can't help you. You're at fault here having this person live with you. So it's tricky. It's a tricky situation. There's a stigmatism, especially when you're a Black woman, that it's fine. This is normal in the Black community. We see all these domestic violence all the time. So why should the police waste their time trying to settle something that they're telling you to go to court for? So that's kind of my experience thus far with the police.
For me, I didn't ever call the police because we were on a military post. And if you get the police involved, then you would have to get his chain of command, which is like his bosses, involved also. So when we did get physical, I would just threaten to call them. And basically, he would kind of either leave or it would just settle down because he just didn't want to have the trouble of that. And I shouldn't have felt like I couldn't have called them. But I did because I'm thinking of the repercussions, like, if he gets in trouble and then I'm just going to make things worse. And again, self-blaming, and it shouldn't be that way. So.
For me, I never called the police. So first, you don't. Anyway, as a man, you see that there's no point to call the police. Anyway, she's a woman. She has all the right. Calling the police will put you end up going to jail instead of her. No, there was no point really. It was for me. It was really verbal abuse, not any to, not anything physical, and yeah.
I did call. I finally got the nerve to do it. In Seattle, Tacoma, I called twice that I can remember. The first time it was because I came out at like 3 in the morning, about to drive to the airport to work, and all my tires were flat. So they came and wrote a report for that, and I had to tell my job and the airline and everything like that. The second time, I actually went through with it. They actually arrested her, and that was a scene that I can't unsee, because they had to manhandle her, and I was hoping she didn't answer the door because I didn't want her to get in trouble. And thank God our daughter wasn't there. But her stepdad was there, and he was threatening me, and the police told me to go inside because he wanted to hurt me. So pretty much her whole family told me I was wrong. She spent like 2 nights in jail because it was Labor Day weekend, and then they let her out. And she came back, and that's when I left. Um, in Dallas, I called the police one time, um, and when they answered, I hung up because I didn't want her to get in trouble. She had kids. I was close with her kids. I didn't want her to be arrested in front of them. I knew that was going to cause more problems because she was very vengeful. So they kept calling back that night, and I never answered. So that was pretty much my thing with the cops.
Thank you so much. At this time, I think we're gonna take a short break. Um, yeah, and we'll be back. We'll share the poll and we'll move with the program. Thank you so much to our panelists. I know this is very moving. I can feel it in your voice. But you're here, so thank you very much. And I hope somebody's gonna benefit from hearing your story. Thank you. All right, once again, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. We're having our second annual Stop Domestic Violence Conference. And our speaker for today are Ms. Brown, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Beaudin, and Mr. Dudley. Right now, I'm sharing a poll that we took earlier. And the purpose of this poll was only to kind of show us how much we have in common. And as I like to say it, we're in this together. Nothing is really new under the sun. And we share way more than what we always think we do. We tend to see people on the outside and kind of like trying to figure out like, oh, they probably have a beautiful life. You know, they're not going through whatever I'm going through. They're not gonna understand. But we need to recognize that there's also our invisible scars, and they also part of our life. The stuff that we go through, the hurt, the pain that we're carrying along with us that nobody's aware because they just not visible. And we need to be more understanding and more patient with one another, and especially as we're dealing with something like domestic violence, because you know, we dress up, we smile, we happy, we go to work, we take care of kids, and then we go back home. And behind the closed doors, nobody really know what's going on. So I hope sharing this with you will kind of made you realize that whatever situation you're in, you're not the only one. There's like millions of people around you, people that you probably will never think of, people you probably will never assume, and they're going through the same thing, and they have to deal with this on a regular basis. But because they're wearing the face, the smile, like one of my patient told me once, she was like, do you ever get mad? Like, well, I don't think you want to see me mad. But she was like, you're always smiling, you're always so happy. Well, listen, we don't always bring our situation with us to work outside of home. Some of us, especially based from our background and culture, we have learned and we have developed some really messed up coping mechanism, and we have learned to kind of like, you know, bury everything under the rug and kind of keep moving on and deal with whatever situation we have to deal with. Like me, when I was going through my situation, my son was about I think he was about 3 years old at that time, becoming, and I also was able to relate with Christina because I was like, oh my gosh, like her telling her story, I felt like that was me. Outside of me, you know, I was back to school, I had to work, he was 3, I was breastfeeding, um I was working full time. It was a lot, but and going to church every Sunday, and you learn to cope. Like as I mentioned earlier, you develop some really messed up coping mechanism because at the time you have to do what you got to do. But recognizing what we endure and work with it, and knowing that not the best way life could be, and work on ourselves and becoming a better version of ourselves. That's all that matters. So that's why we're here today. That's the purpose of us meeting. And once again, I want to thank you. I want to say thank you to our speakers for coming and sharing their stories. It's I know personally, every time you go back, it's like you're reliving the same situation. And sometimes you ask yourself, like, oh my gosh, like what did I do to myself? Like, and it take a lot on you, reflecting on you. So I really want to say how much I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate your work, and thank you for being so involved in your community and taking a step further to want to be involved in preventing um, this to happen to somebody else. It's really precious. So thank you. Um, we're going to move on to our second segment. And also Phil, we don't have like a feel free to jump in whenever. And so the next question I'm gonna ask, and also for everybody who's listening, if you have any question, just feel free to put it in the chat. We'll go through it. And thanks again for being with us. So my next question for the panelists is, I'm looking for my questions. Okay, so how was life? How was starting life after being in an abusive situation? Because, you know, like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm out. Oh, the person is gone. You know, people probably will think like, oh my gosh, you know, everything's fine now. Like, so would you mind share with us how was it to kind of like basically starting life over?
So that just took me back. I must say it was rough. It was not good. It was terrible. Spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, I would say. Not physically anymore, because there's no longer that person around, you know, beating up on you, manipulating you in that essence. But emotionally and spiritually, I was broken. I, you know, ventured out now on my own as a single person, moved states, and decided to start all over, moved away from family, start all over, new job, new everything. Everything, the universe was just giving me everything new on the external. But then when I moved, and you know, I moved from New York to New Jersey. I was the same old Terry. Nothing changed. I was back trying to get on the market, you know, going online, trying to meet up people. And yet it felt empty because I was not fulfilled, still not fulfilled within. And the only way for me to, you know, deal with that issue was to actually be by myself. So I was by myself for 3 years, just focusing on me, focusing on my childhood. You know, how did that, from that point to the abusive situation, you know, and then right back into another abusive situation, like how did I end up there? Like what are the hidden subconscious blocks that I've been, you know, suppressing, that I have not dealt with, that I keep repeating these same pattern and these same experiences? And as you know, Joanne, that's how I end up writing my very first book, The Power of ABCs. And I use the analogy of a tree, of, you know, we stay rooted within our own experiences, even though we're moving all the time. We stay rooted in the same experiences. And if we don't look at it and try to resolve them from within, we will continually be repeating the same experiences in some format or another. You know, it's like the same situation, but different faces. And the fact that I was broken within, broken down spiritually, I just had to take a step back and said, you know what, I need to heal. You know, I could have gone to therapy. I didn't do any of that. I think my healing came from writing my book. Everybody heals differently. I healed through writing my book, writing out the story. You know, a lot of times I found myself crying while I was writing, and I had to go back to the same chapter sometimes. Like the forgiveness chapter is the most famous chapter everybody knows of. You know, learning to forgive, you know, people and forgive myself, most importantly, because you can't forgive anyone if you can't forgive yourself. And you know, that's kind of how I end up after leaving that situation. It was terrible, you know, for almost 2-3 years, just being by myself, trying to figure stuff out, trying to figure finances out, trying to figure my emotions out. Who am I? You know, that was the question. Like, who am I really? Like after you've been through that, you feel broken. You don't even know yourself anymore. And that was one of the things, you know, that I had to come to terms with. Like, who am I? What do I really want from a relationship moving forward? What do I want in terms of, like, you know, who am I going to become? Because a lot of the times these relationships, they are sometimes allowing us to become more than what we were when we were in that situation. if we see it that way, of course, because not many people see it that way. And yeah, that's kind of where it left me after moving on.
I have to agree. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I left, I think it's been now 3 years ago. We were living together in an apartment, and he had finally come back home from being away in Korea, and I just looked at him and I was like, this isn't gonna work. I'm just not happy. This is not where I need to be anymore. And I ended up just breaking my lease and moving out. I took my son to my mom, and I got our movers, and just got our stuff and got out of there in a matter of like 2 weeks. Because when I was fed up at that point. And honestly, the year before, while he was away, I was so depressed, so miserable, debating in my mind back and forth on how to leave, if I should leave, praying, trying to find guidance, and then at that point, I was only working part-time at first when my son was little. And so obviously financial too, I had no money. So I left and I moved back in with my mom. No money, no idea what I'm gonna do. I didn't know what my next step was gonna be. But she was there for me, and she helped support us. And I was able to, it sounds easier said than done, but I had to take money out of our joint account. And he was losing control, so he became very upset over that. I had to get a restraining order against him for me and my son, because he was calling me all hours, all day, just threatening me over the situation of me leaving. And he had no care in the world about our son. He has not seen him since I left. He has not called to ask about him, nothing. Well, anyway, he couldn't call anymore anyway, because I ended up having to change my number too. But we have been going through the divorce, and obviously he's still trying to control me in that sense of me leaving. He's still trying to step in and try and have his way, but the court is not seeing it that way, and they placed a judgment. And again, he popped back up and is trying to fight something again. But at this point, I'm 3 years past it. I'm stronger in myself, in my sense of self. I found myself again. I found my voice. And I have not been in a relationship since leaving, because I had to go to therapy. Honestly, I was on medication, just to deal with all that, because, you just didn't want to get out of bed. But I have this little person I have to look after, and I get up and, I do it for him every day. And now, in the beginning, I did it for him. And now I'm doing it for myself as well, because I want to thrive. I want to have a good life, and I just want to be happy. So.
Yeah, for me, is really the trust. I end up not really trusting people, and then be very careful about who I really want in my life right now. Taking time for me make me realize that like I said, how I've been like in a toxic relationship for so long, like I forget how really life was. It made me realize that I needed to take care of myself, going to the gym, start running, going out with friends. Change the more normal thing, and not having someone who will use words, inappropriate words, like against me. Change the way my life is right now.
Yeah, but all three of you said that you pretty much hit that nail on the head. You know, I felt all that too. Just trying to find yourself. Just an extreme amount of fear, like you said, moving across state lines and going back home and having to face the music, or you failed at the relationship, and when people told you not to go, you know, the child support just it got crazy. You know, once I left, you know, she had them chasing me down everywhere I went, you know, and I only went home and, you know, because I was commuting back and forth still between Dallas and Seattle. So they chasing me like crazy. You know, I had to leave my job because the airline wasn't based down here, you know, so I lost a lot of myself. I was trying to figure out who I was. Um, Depression hit hard. Um, just, you know, a lot of people didn't know where I was because I was not just hiding from myself, I was hiding from everyone else. I didn't want anybody to ask me how I was doing, ask me what I was doing. Um, Took a break off social media because I just wanted to disappear. You know, I just wanted to go to Mexico and open up a tiki bar or something and nobody know where I'm at. You know, just that's how alone I felt. But that's the process I wanted to go to just people just, you know, stay away from me. I just felt just like the luck was out. You know, luckily, you know, my sister was still around, so I leaned on her quite a bit. You know, I ended up telling her what was going on, and my nephews. But my dad had passed, so I didn't have that in my corner anymore. And my mom, I told her, but you know, she really isn't the one to talk to about that sort of stuff. You know, she just wanted to fight. You know, but yeah, it's just it was hard starting over, and then being at the age that I was, you know, and then feeling like a failure, and then knowing that you're not gonna see your child anymore, and you know, having the government after you, and the threatening letters, and you know, pay this or you going to jail, pay this or we're gonna take your driver's license, pay this, you can't get a passport. You know, I actually was training as a flight attendant in Fort Lauderdale for this major airline. I trained for 6 weeks, aced all my tests, got to the last one, I was still trying to get my passport. The state of Washington child support told me that because I was behind on my child support, I was a flight risk. So that kept me from getting the job. So there again, I lost myself because I'm thinking, okay, I got it. I'm acing it. I'm gonna be a flight attendant. You know, I'm always traveling. This is the industry I'm in. You know, but they looking at from what she said. So, you know, I'm a guy. You know, I'm just a statistic to them. I'm just another number, another paycheck. So I pretty much just lived in fear, constant fear that the police gonna show up to my door. That the Dallas constable gonna show up. That I'm gonna end up in jail, and that's not someplace I've ever been. You know, I've been to 3 universities. I have a massive education. You know, I have done so much in my life, and it's like they were trying to take that from me. You know, they don't want you to get better. They don't want you to heal. You know, so that's kind of where my mindset was, and you know, still healing from it. You know, but luckily, you know, by the grace of God, I'm not having the nightmares anymore, the night terrors, the night sweats, waking up swinging, um, you know, just all the crazy stuff that came with seeing, you know, I'd be having sleep paralysis, seeing dark figures at the edge of the bed because she used to watch me, you know. So all that stuff kind of, you know, was gone, but you know, like I said, working on it slowly but surely, but that's kind of where I was at after leaving.
Thank you so much. Um, and as I was saying a statistic in the chat, and it crossed my mind hearing your story. Um, Most people, not everybody, of course, they always tend to think that when they hear violence, it's, you know, it's against women only. But we do find out that that's not true. That's one of the myths against domestic violence. It's anybody. It's something that really doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter what your gender is, your background, socially, educationally. It doesn't matter what kind of job you have, your title, um, your rank in society. Everybody is at risk. And also, we're finding out that these abusers, they kind of, for some reason, somehow, they know who to prey on. They know who to, like, it's like they can smell you from a distance. And that's sadly one of the reason why we see survivors finding themselves um, in other abusive situations. It's like you get out a situation, you know better, or you think you know better, you're working on yourself, and boom, you find yourself in another situation. So therefore, that's why I wanted to mention, like, if you finding yourself in violent situation, you need to not letting your mind trick you into thinking that you're responsible for it. You're you're not responsible for it. That's not your fault. You don't deserve to be abused, and you're not alone. There's a million other people like just like you going through the same thing. And of course, most importantly, you don't have to remain in the situation. There's help available, but you need to find the strength within yourself to speak up and make the decision for yourself, which is another thing, because um, survivors, they don't get out unless they're really ready to get out. And it takes time, it takes resources, and it takes strength, which gonna lead to my next question to you guys. um what were the resources that was along the way that help you kind of, you know, get out your situation? And there's steps that you had to take, because I know you know it's a process. It doesn't happen um you know, one day you wake up and like, oh my gosh, I'm out. No, we know it takes time, and it can't take longer for some than others. And then a little funny story that I like to share all the time. Like, I know for myself, I didn't even know that domestic abuse was a thing. I didn't even understand that I was being abused until I started going to therapy. And I was like, oh my gosh, they have a term for this. And I started Googling and I started checking. Oh my gosh, I'm checking all these boxes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a statistic. And it just like fell on me, like, oh my gosh, like, oh my gosh, that was what's happening for me. And I'm probably sure that, you know, I wasn't the only person that had to get to that realization. So yeah, I know I said a lot. So would you mind like share with us, like, you know, the resources, what helped you, the step you have to take, like how did you get there? How was, if I can summarize it, how was your process of getting out?
I'll start since we're going around the same pattern loop. I'm gonna be honest and just say that I personally did not go to therapy of any type. I did not have anyone rooting for me in the background. I eventually started rooting for myself because I felt like something within me was unleashed when I went through that experience. I found myself through those experiences, believe it or not, the irony, sometimes life is like that. We have to go through some terrible things in order to find who we are and who we are becoming in the process. And for me, I think the resources was through acknowledging and accepting that it did happen and learning to forgive myself. And not everybody can be that strong to realize that they can do that on their own. Some people do need to go to therapy. Some people do need medication. They do need, a family member, a guide to guide them along the way. But, for me, I did not have those external resources, the resources came more from within. Like, I felt like God was guiding me to where I needed to go next. And I just trusted, and I trust my gut instincts that wherever God was taking me was just the right path, even if it was strange, even if I feared it, even if I had no idea if, how people will react, learning that, certain things happen to me. And I wasn't about people pleasing anymore. I was more about pleasing myself and being selfish, because we need to be selfish if we're going to really heal and stop considering what others are going to say, that this happened. And now we're all here, sharing our stories, because we've passed that we're in that selfish mode where we're sharing our stories and say, you know what, this happened to me. I've accepted it. I'm still healing, because the healing never stops. It's a continuous process as we go forward. We're always going to be triggered. I'm always sometimes triggered with memories of that person, or see someone that looks like that person, like, oh, what the hell are they doing here in New York? But it's not them. And you suddenly realize, hey, I have to work on that, right? So it's a continuous process, a continuous growing, and it's, therapy can help, reaching out to, the resources that Jahan shared about, numbers you can call, or a family member or a sibling or someone. But the most important resource that you can tap into is yourself. And you will eventually get there. Some people get there faster than others. It's fine. It's not a race. It's not a competition. It's all about the journey. And that's what's important here.
For me, I had my mom, of course, and that was because she had experienced her own form of abuse in her marriage previously. So she was able to see the signs. And, I joke and I say, she was being overbearing and she's just nagging me. And, I'm not her. But praying and reflecting during that year while he was away really just opened my eyes to just rethinking, situations and things that happened, or things he said, or things we did, that made me see that this is abuse. Like, this is a form of abuse. This is not okay to accept in my situation. So coming to that realization, like, it did take me some time. No matter what other people were saying to me, I had to really believe it for myself and realize that I needed to get out. And, therapy was a huge help for me, talking it out and, writing about it and just, praying about it. And I joined small groups. When I came back to New York, I found a new church. I joined small groups at church. And God kind of pushing me to tell people about what's going on, because I had that fear, I had that shame that I didn't want to tell people, that I failed. I didn't want anybody to judge me for, my marriage not working or the issues I was having. So coming to that realization that of stepping outside of my own fear and things and my own insecurity and just telling my story, it has helped other people. And you don't always have that family support, but there's a lot of community resources out there. And I'm big on wanting people just to know, about all the resources that you can find. If you ever need help, to just get out, because I was blessed to have my mom see what was going on and help me get out. But a lot of people don't have that. But like I said, there's a lot of other ways for you. Terry had the strength to do it on her own, and some people might not, but there are plenty of social workers, any pastors, whoever, somebody on the street, your neighbor, you never know who can help you and support you and just help you get out.
For me, it's like moving by myself really help. Going to therapies also help. Also make me realize what was going on because you're not a specialist, you don't really understand. Since you start explaining everything, and then talking to someone, explaining myself, let my feeling go away, make me really understand what happened. Yeah, and also praying, um, praying more, because sometimes you'll say you pray tonight and you sleep and you're not really consistent. Being consistent, and that also helped. And then seeing family, speaking with people that know you, that used to know us, and help also, really.
For me, I just had to be completely transparent. I had to stop lying to myself and to my coworkers. So what I did is I finally got the nerve to go to the big bosses at the airline. Um, I told everybody I could in SeaTac Airport. I told the management, I told the COO, I told the CEO, I told HR, and I had to, because it was getting to the point to where I was in danger of losing my job because my attendance was so bad. Um, Tardies, um, and I'd lie about it, and then the scars, coming to work with the scars on my face, and other people would call me out and I'd lie about it, too ashamed to tell them what was going on. But some people knew, because some people there were dealing with their own domestic violence situations as well, or they had been through it before too. Um, Luckily, one of the ladies in HR, she actually was a survivor, and she talked to me and sat me down and kind of gave me my options. Um, so then the airline knew that if I didn't show up or if I was late, they were sending the police to the house. Thank God. If it wasn't for them, I would have been completely alone in Seattle. If it wasn't for my airline family, if it wasn't for the people at SeaTac Airport checking on me and keeping her away from me and trying to keep me safe. Port of Seattle police, all those guys. Um, so like I said, I had to be completely transparent, completely honest, and put it out there and tell them what I was really going through. So um, I did end up, getting a little therapy. I actually had a therapist. The airline helped me get that. I had a therapist in Seattle, and I had a therapist in Dallas, because I was, like I said, I commute, so I was flying back and forth. I didn't like Seattle, so on the weekend I'm out of there. I'm flying back to Dallas to give me some sunshine. And then I have to go back to work, to the rain and the cold. So I'm back in Seattle at the airport. So I'd see one therapist during the week in Seattle. On the weekend, I see the one in Dallas. So that went on for a little bit. Not too long. It was starting to help, but I don't even know why I stopped doing it. I think one of the ladies, she ended up leaving in Dallas, so I couldn't see her anymore. And the one in Washington, I think I was just like tired of being up, up there. So I was just like, I'm just gonna leave and just not continue it, because I don't, the whole place is just a trigger for me. So that's pretty much what I had to do to get out of that situation. The second one, I just didn't let it go on that long back home. I after I was fed up after those few months, the next day I just ran. I flew somewhere else. I flew out with a sweatshirt, some sweats, what I had on my back, and she destroyed the rest of my clothes. She destroyed my passport. She destroyed everything. She took everything. So I had to start all over again. So um, yeah, that's kind of what happened with that. But the first time I told, and then the second time I ran.
We mentioned earlier that living was a process. So we have one question from Bella, and feel free to put your input into it. She asked, how many times did you try to leave before you finally left?
Hi, Belle. So that's a very good question. For me, I can tell you it was around 3 times for me. That I definitely like. The first time I didn't, first time I tried to leave, I was trying to go to a shelter actually, but then I knew myself, I knew I couldn't survive in that world. So I stayed the first time around. The second time I tried to leave, I basically reached out to my dad. My dad and was not and I were not on the good terms. I kind of blamed him for being in the situation a little bit because he was the one who kicked me out of the house, and then I end up living with a boyfriend at 19 years old. So that I kind of blamed for. So I didn't leave because I know that was just me ending up in probably another situation of some type. And then the third time, that I did end up leaving, I fester up the strength out of nowhere when I called the cops, and this person was shocked that I'm becoming more bold and more brazen. And I got more bold because I was tired. I was just tired and drained, and I just, instead of knocking him over the head with a pot, I just decided to just like, find some inner strength to be strategic and see how I'm gonna leave out of the situation so that I can have the betterment of for my future. So 3 times for me.
I also have to say it was 3 times for me I tried to leave. The first time when I got fed up was when I left. We were still living in California, but the thing was I was 6 months pregnant, and I left and I went to my office. I had an office by myself, and I just slept in there. I didn't know what to do, where to go. And I ended up just going back. The second time was when I came back to New York. I tried to be amicable about it, try and tell him like, this is just not working out. I think it's just better for us both to move on. But of course, he manipulated his way back to getting me to try and make things work. And then the third time when I finally left was after having that separation from him for a little while, for him not to be constantly in my head telling me things and trying to feed me whatever he thinks I want to hear. And at that point, I already had my son, and I just didn't want my child to grow up thinking that this was healthy or that this was an okay way for him to treat any woman.
And I wanted to also share. um, as for me, I think I lost count. Because I mean, I just wanted to answer because I didn't want her to kind of put a time frame on it. Because like I mentioned earlier, it really depends on the person, and unless you're really ready, this doesn't happen. And you also have to think about the safety part of it, because most most people they get killed on their way out. So there's also like that safety measure that plays out. I just remember calling the cops a couple of times, and every time between me calling and them coming, arriving at the house, he'll brainwash me, like you guys mentioned earlier. Because as for me, I had to stop working at some point, so I was solely dependent on him. So it will say things like, and we also had a young baby. You'll be like, okay, so now what are you gonna do? Who's gonna take care of you? Like, how are we gonna eat? Who's gonna feed the baby? And I'll be thinking about all of these, and I'll feel weak, and I'll feel depressed, and I'll be like, I guess I'll stay. Or there's that time where, like Terry mentioned, actually left. I went to a shelter, but to me, I realized that was that wasn't the right timing, because when I actually left this time, I had to choose between finishing school, because I was in school at the time, and my son was I think it was about like 2 or 3 or something like that. and I had to jungle, and I had to make the decision. Him being that young, and then now like, who's gonna watch him? And I wanted to be independent. So am I gonna like stay in that shelter, not finishing school, or go back and trying to make the best out of it until I get myself situated? And also, I had to deal with the fact that my son, not being used to be watched by other people, he actually got really sick in like 1 or 2 days of being there. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. I got overwhelmed. So we just like, okay, I guess we're going back. So we went back. And also I had to deal with the time where I was lying to myself because I thought that I could make the situation better, right? Because we do this. To be like, maybe if I behave a certain way, it won't get upset. Maybe if I'll make certain decision, or if I don't answer, or um if I don't question him, because we had that issue of questioning too, because it's like, why are you asking so many questions? Like, like, don't ask me questions. So I'll be like, okay, maybe if I don't say this. So I had to sit down every time, like before I start talking, I had to go in my head, like, okay, so how do I make sure I pick the best words possible, not to, having a situation right now. Or even if I wanted to say something, maybe I'll be like, that's not the best time to say something. And all of these, like, it's like, why? Like, but like I said, it's there's a lot that get into it in the process of living that people don't really understand most of the time. So it's not like you just get up one day and be like, oh, I'm leaving and I'm out. It takes time, and it's a process, and you being in the situation, it takes a lot of out of you, because you have to make lifetime decision, life threatening decision, and you have to be able to deal with them. And if you're not ready for that mentally, physically, and emotionally, it's just not gonna happen. So really, like, the time really depend on the person, on where you are, your mindset, and your surrounding, and what resources you have available. And I hope that Bella, that answer your question. So we're going to move forward. I wanted to also mention, like, as we all know, that different kind of violence, right? We got physical violence, which is the most obvious, that leave the scars, the black eyes, the bleeding and all that. But we also have emotional abuse, where the person put you down, call you crazy, do the mind games, right? Make you feel less than. They isolate you from your friends and your family. And if you have children, they use your children against you. Like, oh my gosh, like, you're gonna go to court, I'm gonna take the kids away from you. We also have financial abuse, where when you depend on the person, they making the money. So now, like, they giving you like money for the week or something like that, or they're taking money away. Or some situation, like Tommy was explaining, the pressure will be so much that you risk losing your jobs. And some of them even go further. They call your jobs and tell stories about you and get you fired, just because they want you to depend on them. And there's also sexual abuse. This one was even like a big thing for me too, because being married, I didn't even realize that you could have been raped in a marriage. I had to understand that whole process. It just blew my mind, like the concept of, like, it doesn't matter, no said no, whenever, however, relationship, no said no. So all these different dynamic, and the person also will like treat you like a toy. It's whenever, however they feel like it, they want it. And there's something now that becoming more and more usual with social media, something called digital abuse, where they will use social media to track you down, track your action, where you're going, who you're talking to, all of these behaviors. And then they all the different kind of abuse. So and I'm saying all this to move to my next question. I know Tommy and Terry, you guys mentioned triggers, right? So facing and you all had to face different level of abuse, but coming out of the situation and dealing with this and how it affected you. I know I do. I have a lot of triggers. How do you deal with these triggers? Because a lot of people, they don't even realize that they have triggers based on situation they had to deal with. You know, like you just explode out of nowhere because somebody tell you something and you don't know why. You don't understand why until like you sit down and realize that, oh my gosh, I was triggered because this and this and this happened. So would you mind like talk to us a little bit about like these triggers, how they affect you like right now? How did you realize that you even had triggers? And probably, I mean, some people until now they probably didn't even realize they have triggers. So let's talk about triggers.
Sure. Trigger, not the trigger finger. Um, so, so triggers. Wow. Yeah, they are something we all have to deal with when we've been through traumatic experiences. And some of us have like shut it down all the way down into our subconscious mind, haven't dealt with it. And suddenly an experience comes up and our subconscious mind decides to bring it up and the memories and everything start flooding back to you and you're triggered. You feel anxiety, you feel a rush of stress out of nowhere, the fear, the insecurities, the lack thereof in yourself starts to just boil up to the surface. And then suddenly you realize that, you know, there's a situation, a problem that I have not really dealt with. And I'm in a new situation and I'm being triggered to deal with it right now. Um, and triggers for me, they're very complicated because you just don't know when they will show up. And even after going through therapy or even are doing whatever you need, resources that you have to say that you're healing, right? And I said this earlier, this is why I say healing is a continuous process. You don't just stop right there and heal and everything is a-okay. And that's how I learned from that after having so many triggers every time when I'm reminded, even if I heard this person's name, I'm triggered. Even if I see a reference to like where I used to live, I'm triggered. And so it awareness is the key thing to realize that they're there. And when I used to have those stress and anxiety coming up, I would, think something is wrong with me. I thought, maybe I'm just like, there's no hope for me or anything of the kind. But then after having that awareness and, acceptance of, that they're always going to be there, there's always going to be this reminder that this happened to you. I learned to start dealing with them in a way where, and as they come up, I acknowledged that they do come up. And I said, okay, maybe I need to write it down. Maybe I need to pray about it. They still come up. I'm not going to lie to anyone. They still do come up when things happen. And I just see them for what they are. And I said, you know what? I'm going to forgive, but I may never forget. And as long as I'm alive, I understand that this is just part of my life experiences, but it's not going to continually make me who I am. It's not going to dictate how I'm going to live my life. It's not going to dictate how I treat other people and who I'm going to trust in the future, because trigger and trust come hand in hand. And so the most important thing is that you realize that they're there and you work through them day by day. It's, slow and steady. It's not a quick overnight process. It's not something that you can just turn off and turn on, even though they feel like they're being turned off and turned on, in the moment. It's just something that you've kind of have to realize that you are not your experience. You're more than your experiences. And your experiences are just showing you that, you have it. You are in control of your internal world, and you're in control about how you react in any situation. So I think triggers are, they can be a powerful source of realizing that this is how far I've come, from that experience. So that's how I see triggers in that essence.
Triggers is the reason why I have not been gung-ho on dating. I'm still working through that feeling of not wanting to put my issue on someone else. So that's why I've held off on doing that and just focusing on myself, going back to school and finishing what I want to do first before I decide to bring somebody else in my life. Also, I wanted my divorce and everything with this old person to be settled because it's, for me, it's just too much anxiety and everything with the situation that I don't want somebody else to have to go through that. And I need to deal with that. Also, my other trigger, which I'm trying to work on, is when my son asks about his dad, or when he says, "Oh, mommy, I don't have a dad." Okay. It's very hurtful and very hard to explain to a 4-year-old, what's going on. And I've learned to take a deep breath and just kind of explain to him, it's just the two of us. We're our family. You have your nana and your pop, and you have your cousins, and, we're enough. And I just kind of changed the subject. I don't get upset about it anymore. I don't try and make excuses for him anymore. And it's, it's always going to be hard. It's always going to be a trigger. It's always going to be hard to explain to him, but it's just constantly making him feel reassured and not letting him feel my anxiety or me being upset about it.
For me, it's just affect the way I used to work, my motivation to go and perform well at work. It's usually one of the things that trigger me. I'm usually happy, drink my coffee, ready to work. I was like, I don't know, I lost motivation. I didn't even want to walk. I wanted to have some break. And do your thing, make things, acting like.
Tommy?
Yes. I didn't know if he was finished or not. He started fading out. Well, for me, triggers, they go deep. I agree with what everyone else said as well. Some triggers I had to deal with were smells, um, certain body washes, certain lotions that we had at the house, certain foods that we ate. I can't even use them anymore. I can't use those lotions, those body washes. Something I used to do for myself every day or every paycheck. I try to, do some kind of self-love. I'm big on music. Everybody who knows me know I love music. It calms me. I express myself through, listening to Tupac and stuff. I get whatever I'm feeling out. So I was buy a CD from Best Buy every time I got paid. So I have like a book of like 400 CDs from being in Seattle, Tacoma. As of now, I don't even listen to those CDs anymore because I was listening to those driving down the freeway, driving through these neighborhoods. And I remember where I was at when I was listening to them. I remember where I was at when I bought them. So it's like these albums, this music that I love so much is tied to Washington. and I can't shake it. You know, so I gave the CDs away, and that hurts because of my love for music. Music is one of my coping mechanisms. So the CDs that I have now are CDs that I started listening to when I was at home and in other areas that I've lived in. So I can listen to those no problem, because they're not tied to anything. They're tied to just my new life, me just being on my own and doing what I do. Um, yeah, but like I said, it's like certain scents, certain things that you use, certain places that you did. It's like if I go to Seattle and I'm driving around, I get triggered by that because it was an area I went in with her family, or an area that we lived in, and I started sweating and get nauseous. If she messages me on Facebook Messenger, and she might send me one picture a year of my daughter, and that's it. It's just random. It might be the first day of school. It might be Easter. Every time she sends it, I get sick. I get nauseous because it's like, I want to see my daughter, but what mess are you about to try to pull? And after the picture comes, here it is. Why don't you want to see her? Why aren't you doing this? She's doing this and she looks just like you. And it's like, are you trying to, trigger me? Are you trying to just find something to do? Because I know she looks like me. She's my daughter. I never denied that. Of course I want pictures. Yeah, keep sending the pictures. Just leave me alone. We don't really have anything to talk about, because it's like, I'm not trying to fight. If I say something negative, it's bad. If I don't say anything at all, it's still bad. So I'm between a rock and a hard place. So her being a trigger like that, at first I had unblocked everyone that was in the past, that was in her family, because I was like, once I start speaking out, I'm not gonna let anybody silence me. I'm not gonna live in fear. I'm gonna, if they want to come after me, so be it. So I had unblocked them all. But then when she keeps coming around the pictures, Father's Day is a trigger because I don't have my dad and I don't see my daughters. So seeing everybody posting about Father's Day is hurtful because I'm thinking about my dad and I'm thinking about my chance to not be a dad. So, those are all like triggers. They like Queen said, they just kind of come, here and there. But I mean, they're always there, and you kind of have to try to figure out a way to work through them. And I tell people about them, and that's why with this advocacy, I keep telling people so people are aware. When Mother's Day come around, everybody's not going to be wanting to celebrate Mother's Day. When Father's Day come around, everyone's not. Everyone doesn't love Valentine's Day. Everyone doesn't love Christmas. People have lost people. People are going through things, so it's selfish for everyone out here to think that just because your life is the way you supposedly want it to be, and you're showing all this stuff on social media, that everyone else is at that same place, because it's not. So you have to think about those other people that are going through other things, that are having these triggers that they see on social media. So it's like, sometimes you just have to take a break from it. And, like I say, you work on yourself. And one of the survivor sisters over in the DMV over in Maryland, she told me you have to know when you're being triggered. You have to know what your triggers are. You have to know when they come in and how to deal with them. And that'll, further your healing process. So that's something that I'm still continuing to work on as well.
You're mute.
Thank you so much, Terry. So, I'm sorry. So the person who using the LG raised their hand. So I was wondering if they had a question or a comment.
Hi, this is Laurence. Yes, I do have a question. But first of all, I would like to thank all of our speakers for being here today. I'm another member of the board, so I'd like to thank all of you for being here with us today, for sharing your stories. They're so impactful and so deep, and thank you for being so open and sharing with us. So my question is for all of you. So feel free to, all of you feel free to answer. If you want to. Is it? Do you have reactions, or is it hard for you when there are stories in the news from time to time about victims of domestic violence, basically? And most times when we hear those stories, these people did not get out. Um, and I guess the most recent case that I'm thinking of that made national news is the Gabby Petito case. Of course, it's mostly conjecture at this point. But from all the little tidbits that I'm hearing, it was at the very least a toxic relationship. Um, and obviously, we all know how badly that ended. So I was just wondering, in this day and age with all these social media and news stories coming out of these kind of situations, does it cause reactions in you? Does it cause triggers in you? And how are you able to handle it? How are you able to process it? Thank you.
That's a very good question. Thank you for your question. So that's, of course, we're humans. We're gonna react. Just for that person, what happened to them, and sensitizing to the fact that it reached that far, and then also remembering that you were at the tipping point of that story as well. Like it could have been you. But then I always in that moment when I do read those type of stories, and I still read them from Jamaica especially, they happen all the time, and I'm I say to myself, I'm very glad, but then I also take myself a little bit out of the equation and say, I'm concerned about those who are actually still in that situation, and what can I do to, help them? And this is one of the reasons why I'm speaking here at this time. And also realizing that it's not easy. It's not easy because no matter what, we're forever, I think forever, we're forever gonna be this trigger, reminder of this experience, and then you see other people going through it, and then you're still gonna be reminded because they're in the depth of it, and like, what can you do to help? And then you realize that you can't save everyone, and then it disheartens you. It really does. And then you realize, like, what? This is why I'm gonna continue to raise awareness of what happened to me, so that maybe one ear, even if it's one ear that that's listening now or listening somewhere else, or see this video later on, they realize that they can have the strength and power to get out of the situation before you end up on the news, which is what so much of us don't want to be at that point in time. But it does happen, and unfortunately it's just not enough awareness around it. There has been awareness, but not to the level where the Black Lives Matters movement or the Me Too movement and all these different things. Like, domestic violence is something that goes on all levels: physical, emotional, mental abuse. At work, they're violent bosses. Emotional abuse at work, it's on so many levels. As long as we're continually dealing with people who have not dealt with their own self and trying to project things onto someone else because they see you as a toy or someone you can play with. So, it's that reaction is continually going to be there. But I know moving forward that, as long as I have this voice and I'm able to use it, I will continue to do so for even one person who's still caught up in that situation and who wants to get out, but doesn't have the strength or the power, the inner power to do so. So thank you very much for that question, because that's a very, very important question, I feel.
For me, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm a constant work in progress. So sometimes to see those stories on the news, I have to ignore them. I have to turn them off because, you know, it is a trigger, and it can be very heartbreaking and hard to relive exactly what can happen to somebody or what could have happened to me. But in the same breath, I do like to pay attention sometimes, if I'm in the right headspace again, to what is going on and how did they get to that point? Because usually, you know, it's people that were around, you know, police were called or something, but they're just not educated. You know, they don't know the resources. They just go out, they do the welfare check, and they're just, you know, and that's it. They don't, you know, like even with the Gabby situation, I saw a little bit where they interviewed the two of them, you know, when they pulled them over and kind of separated them, but that's not the best way for somebody who's in a situation that needs to get out. You need to completely separate them, not just on the street, take them in the station, put them in separate rooms, you know, have somebody, or, you know, or make it more comfortable for her that she could speak out. And I think it's important that we continue to speak out and tell our stories and try and educate for me, at the other nurses, police officers, you know, social workers, whoever, about the resources, the signs of what can go on, you know, and how best to approach people and try and make them feel like they have a safe space where they can go and talk.
To be honest, guys, I didn't really listen and understand the question. Can someone repeat it for me, please? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure. I was asking with when there's stories in the news and social media about people who have been in domestic violence situations, and were unable to get out, like the Gabby Petito case. That's the most recent on the news right now. Do you have a reaction to it? Is it a trigger? And how are you able to handle it or process it?
I see those kind of news. It really make me sad, especially because there was if you see especially the Gabby Petito's story, there was a sign. There was you know, if the police would have done a properly job, if someone would have protect her from this guy, because I'm sure that's not the first time that happened. If even I don't know, you know, sometimes parents they saw the sign and they don't act as I know he's not gonna do that until, you know, things happen, and then right now she's gone, and then you see the news, oh, she's died. I feel like those kind of things could have been, if the police, if the people around handle things right, would have been like would have been not in this worst situation that we are now. And every time that I see those kind of news, it's, I don't know, it's, I try not to read a lot about it, but it's really affect me. It just make me sad.
You know, to answer your question, I mean, of all the survivors I met, even on this panel, you know, we have big hearts. You know, we feel deep. You know, and it's not a bad thing. It's not that we weak, but we're genuinely good people, huge hearts. And some people don't know how to deal with that. They take advantage of that. So we feel it deep. You know, I was just reading a story that happened in Dallas, and it's probably not going to get national coverage, you know, like most of them don't. You know, it was a 23-year-old female and a 22-year-old male, and they had a 5-month-old baby. She came over, they got it on camera, and he was videotaping as well from his phone. So she came over and she drove and she jumped out the car. She came in to do whatever she's gonna do to him. So he's chasing her out, but he's recording her the whole time. You see him fall because she shot him in the head. She jumps out to get his phone and speeds off. So the Dallas police are looking for her. Her father has spoken with her, so he's the middleman to help her come in so the police can get her. They take the father to the hospital. She goes to jail for a day. They let her out. Then he ends up dying in the hospital. Then they go back and get her. I was thinking domestic violence ruins everybody's life. It's not just the victims, it's the families. It's this 5-month-old boy who's gonna tell him what happened to his daddy? How's he gonna understand that growing up? Is the system gonna take him? You know, who's gonna tell him what made his mom flip out to the point where she murdered his dad? You know, what is the family doing? His mother and her mother, they parents, they cousins, it's hurting the whole community. It's not just them two. And 2 lives are gone now. His because it ended early because he's dead, and hers because she did it, so she's going to prison for the rest of her life. She's gonna be separated from her baby as well. So it's like, you know, of course that got to me, not just because it was a male that it was happening to, but because they were 2 young people. You know, they're grown, you know, they 20 something, but they you still ain't scratched the surface yet at 20 something. You know, I'm 40 now, you know, at 20 something, you know, that was still college years for me. You know, so you're still trying to find your way. So I mean, to say that, it's like, of course, you know, that affected me on so many levels. And I sent it to a couple of people because I wanted them to see, you know, because still, you know, with DV in the community, especially against males, I had a young lady tell me too, actually. I posted about DV and I made it, you know, I sent this post and it said that we need to make it a situation for everybody, not just a male or female gender thing. You know, DV happens to everybody, you know, like you said, with whoever status, you know, race, whatever, it doesn't matter where you at, blue collar, it doesn't matter. So if, you know, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, it just, I can't remember what I was gonna say, forgive me, but that one got to me. And like I said, yeah, of course, you know, we're all gonna feel it. You know, I feel for that young lady up there, you know, with what happened to her. And unfortunately, you know, sometimes, you know, the police tend to turn the other way. You know, they don't really pay attention. You know, a lot of people don't pay attention to what's going on out here. And had more people known, had more people been aware, you know, maybe it could be stopped. And like Sister Terry said, you know, we just need to keep pushing hard to the metal, going out here advocating, keep speaking, keep talking about it, so people can see what we've dealt with, and they'll have the strength to get out and, like you said, not feel like it's just them, like we felt. You know, we felt like it was just us, but there was other people dealing with it before us. Our parents, our great grandparents, you know, other people before us was dealing with it, and it was shoved under the carpet. But now we putting it out there, but we just gotta keep putting it out there.
Thank you so much, everybody. I think Belle has a question.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm watching from Mali, that's in Africa. I just want to align my thoughts with what Tommy is talking about. It's not only the victims that are affected by domestic violence. I have a case now, my younger sister, that's her second marriage. She had 3 kids with the first. The second one, she has 2 kids. She's in a very abusive relationship. We've tried all we could to support her get out of there, but every time she goes back, even the police is tired of her. Can you imagine? So I don't know, in such a situation. Okay, she lives in Paris. She lives in the outskirts of Paris. That's in France. So we've tried our best. So for me, at a certain point, you know, like as Tommy says, it's a whole family that is affected. Who knows what is going to happen? How can we help her? We've done everything we could. The police has intervened. And in France, it's like, if you withdraw your case, there's no case. This is where we find ourselves. So the other day I was just telling her, you are in a suicidal relationship. And until you realize that, because the relationship is destroying her first 3 kids. The first husband, they divorced not because of violence. It was because of, you know, incompatibility. But she got into a relationship where it's affecting her eldest kids. You see, so it's so complex. We are all on our toes because we don't know when it's going to happen. Who knows what he's going to do it? Today he's a saint. The next day it's as if I don't want to call the devil because the devil is not part of it. I think he has a mental problem. The kids are so worried. So I think it's Terry. I'm not sure if it's Terry who was talking about having her family, or it's you. To walk out of this abuse. We've tried, we've given her all the support, be it morally, financially, you know, every support, but she's still there. We don't know, and she knows she's in an abusive, the phone is, she knows she's in abuse, but she doesn't want to go out. She's like, oh, every marriage, you know, we can fix, you know, it's just a problem of, you know, adaptation and things like that. It is verbal, physical, and just everything. So it's so complex work. It's so complex. I am an advocate against all forms of violence, but I can't get my, you know, I can't get my sibling out of it. So, you know, sometimes I'm like, when I even start talking about, I start advocating, and I you know, like it gets back to me like, you are making all that noise. You cannot even get somebody who see your blood from it. You understand the dilemma in which I am now. I've been advocating. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I post every day since 2000. You know, like I post like this year. I'm redoing the post that I did in 2018. I'm just doing a review, but I'm helpless when it comes to my sibling. That's my second follower. And she's 40 years. It's not like if she were 20, she was 20, I would understand, but she's 40. So you see the complexity. We all are suffering, whether we like it or not. So how do we get the society cleansed? How do we cleanse the society from because I am not physically abused, I am not verbally abused, but my sibling is physically and verbally abused. So you see, psychologically, I'm affected. So I'm affected by the abuse. So you see the complexity of domestic violence. Yeah, thank you so much.
I don't know if any of you want to say something before I talk.
I just want to say thank you, Belle, for sharing your story and, you know, how that affects you as a family member, you know, looking from the outside in, not necessarily being the victim of abuse, but indirectly being abused by the fact that that's your sibling and you are not sure how to help them, you know, out of that situation. It's very, like you said, complex and very complicated, you know, getting involved. And it's a good thing that you're there for your sister. And that's very, very important. And you keep being there for your sister until, you know, she finds the strength to get out of it. And I pray she finds the strength to get out of it through some form or another before it's too late or anything of the kind. So blessings to you. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, so what I wanted to say was, like I mentioned it repeatedly earlier, to Belle, it's something that, people outside of being in the situation don't always understand is the victim, we don't leave until we're ready. And being ready takes time. It's a process. You have to be physically, emotionally, and financially ready. And, for some reason, being good people, like Tommy said, we think that we can do miracle, right? We can change the person, we can adjust, we can make the situation better. And it's something that we invest ourselves so much into. Sometimes it's really hard to just let go, because I don't think any human being get into a relationship and you know and just like not putting the work into it, and just you ready to just let it go like that. Most of the victim is not the case. And when you have children involved, it complicates a lot of things, because now you have to be thinking about your children. Do you want them to be raised without the other parents? Are you ready to take that full responsibility and be both mother and father? Are you ready to deal with the questions? Because some of these kids, they super smart these days, and they will ask you really, weird question that even you at the age you'll think about it, but you will never ask. And also you have to deal with the fact of like Christina mentioned earlier, the fact that you actually fail, because I felt like that too. I felt like when I get married, once I was married, I didn't get married and then invest myself at a divorce. So now you have to be dealing with that failed relationship. And some of these people, that's like their second, their third, their fourth relationship. At this point, you're questioning yourself. Is there something wrong with me? Am I like, making this happen? Why this keep happening to me? So it's a lot of psychological and mental issue that you have to personally deal with. And just because all of this is not visible, like I like to call it, I call it invisible scars, because nobody sees it. It's really hard to understand that somebody is even going through all of this, because it's like a battle within yourself. And until you reach the point where you accept, okay, I didn't do this. Of course, I made the choice, right? I made the choice and the decision to be with that person, but I'm not the reason why the person is behaving that way. I'm not able to control the action. I didn't make them do this. I don't deserve this. I deserve better. There's nothing wrong with me. I need to be loved and taken care of. But until you reach that point, and it takes longer for some people than some others, but until you in that stage in your mind, um you always gonna think you can change the person for some reason. It's hard to explain, but the investment that you put out there and the time, and it's something that people used to tell me and I didn't really understand until I really start working with survivors. I was in the my relationship for 5 years. And when I started talking about it, a lot of older women, they were like, oh my gosh, like you're so blessed. You were only there for 5 years. And I was telling myself, like, these people, they're crazy. Like, it was 5 years of not married. Like, what they talking about? Like, I almost died multiple times. Like, I'm messed up now. My brain is messed up. I'm not able to like having any kind of healthy like relationship at the moment. It's like these people, they're crazy. But as I got further down into working into it, and I realized that a lot of people, they stay, they adjust themselves, they compromise, and by the time like some of them they made the decision and they realize they're like 60 years old, they're 70 years old, and some of them they just never leave, they just learn how to survive into it. So I'm saying all this to say that all of this is a process and it takes a lot of time. And like the abusers, like you said, they know how to navigate that system, right? Because you have like the cycle of violence. They will do something to you and then they start crying, ask for forgiveness, bring you flowers, bring you gift, make promises, this never gonna happen again. And then now you fell right into it. You forgive, we cry together, we make commitment with this, we make like this big decision, this big plan for the future. If you go to church, we go to the pastor, we pray about it, everybody's all happy, and we know we have that bright future in front of us. And then next thing you know, the next day we're right back to it, and this keep going and going and going. And could you believe like how that make you feel as a human being? You keep going through this, and it's like what's happening? And until like you get pulled out and realize like this is the cycle and I need to break that cycle, you never you're not out, you're just in it, you're circling and circling and circling, which is sad and unfortunate. But the advice that I will give to you, Belle, who want to be, just be there for your sister, because at until she's really ready, there's nothing really that you can do, like it doesn't matter how much you talk, how much you send her facts, she always gonna find an excuse to say, okay, I know you said this, but this doesn't apply to me, my situation is at that level, so I can still figure it out, because that's what we do. So the best thing you could do in the whole family, since she's already, thank God that you still involved in her life, because these people, they take you out from your family. You can't talk to them, you can't see them, you can't reach out to them. And sometimes you don't even realize that you're so isolated until you went out and you have like, oh my gosh, I don't have nobody to call, nobody to reach out. Like so thank God that you still have that line of communication open. So what you could do is just, be there, um, listen, listen without like judgment, make her feel comfortable, and and try, even I know it might be really, really hard to understand, especially if you didn't grow up with the situation, but that's the best thing that you can do right now, because until she's ready, and sometimes like we think we're ready, we leave and we go right back like you said, and we do it multiple times. So there's nothing really that you can do. Like you said, they call the cops, they comes. If I don't press charges, there's no case, so what they gonna do? I remember even at my house, it got so bad at some point, I will call and I promise you nobody will come because they'll be like, that woman, she just called. I guess she's just calling because she want to call. Because every time they will come, they'll be like, do you want to press charges? And I will think about it. I'll feel bad about it. I'm like, I'm going to send my son, father to jail. I'll feel bad. I always say no. So at some point, it started getting really, really bad, but I will call and they would just not show up. So that's unfortunately, that's where we are. But and that's why we do what we do now, to bring awareness on it. But it's a process, the whole leaving, breaking the cycle. It sounds easy when you said it, but like actually living in the situation, dealing with it, and having to understand all these emotions that are going through you, it's a whole different thing. And even sometimes like you deal with it and you don't even understand, because it's like seeing you outside of you, you like how this even happened, how I let this get so bad, like why did I stay so long, what I was thinking of, I don't know, like maybe I wasn't, like we said, told me we good people, we think we can make miracles or something, I don't know. But I hope Belle, that bring you some clarity on the subject and help you cultivate more patience with your sister, and just love her, make sure you're there, you love her, so she'll know that she had option and she had a different version of love, until she realized that this kind of love is not what she needs, and what she deserves, and she's strong enough to stand on her own and then to make the decision and get out. Okay, so I'm reading her comment. She said we got to that level where we don't even make comment about it. I love her, but with what I hear on the news, I get so scared to lose her. And which is understandable, and we can relate. We can share the stories, but I guess it's one of the situations where you really feel powerless, because it's just, how can you help somebody who's not ready, to take your hand? You can't force her to get out the relationship. You can, at this point, being outside of it, the best thing that you can do is be there at this point. I don't know if any of you want to add anything else, because it's so sensitive, and then there's so many different aspects of it.
Um, I would just like to add, Miss Bell. I know I can hear the frustration and the concern in your voice, and Miss Terry and everyone's made, what they're saying is pretty much how that is. Like, it is a sensitive situation. It is complex. Um, Fear is paralyzing. Fear will completely paralyze you. I'm afraid of heights. When I get in front of it, I stop. I can't move. I sweat. Palms are sweating, can't breathe, just panicking. As victims, as survivors, when we in that situation, we froze. We froze until we feel that warmth enough to move. We hear what you're saying, we see it, but at the same time, we in la la land. We in love. We don't want to fail. We want to make it work. We don't know where to go. We lost ourselves. All these different things. So it's just patience. You have to have patience with your sister, and like my pastor used to say, you just have to love them. You just have to show them love, because sometimes we don't know what love is. A lot of us don't know what love is. And I know the fear is there in you, and it just makes you want to push harder and fight harder, and just keep on doing your advocacy, keep on spreading the awareness, but don't put it to where you make her run, you make her put up a shield against you because she feel like you don't understand, or because she don't see it the way you see it, because that can also happen. Somebody telling you stuff so much and bad mouth another person, and then you start to, oh, I gotta defend the person I love, and I gotta defend my heart because they don't understand. So just show her that genuine love that you've always shown her as a sister, even before this situation. Remember the severity of it, but have empathy, have sympathy, have all that, and just continue to love on. Like I said, don't stop advocating. Don't fall weary and feel like it's hopeless, because it's not. As long as the good Lord keep her alive, as long as she's still breathing, there's always hope. And prayer is a key. If it gets to be too much for you, you talk to the Lord, and have him give you peace, have him give you the mind or the words to what to say to her, because God speaks through us, and he can get to any level with anybody, the levels that we can't get to, but he knows how to touch a heart, he knows how to protect the heart. So I don't want you to be discouraged, or weary. I know you're gonna get that way because you're human. I get that way. But when I was in that situation, everybody was saying, "Oh, you need to leave her. She ain't about nothing. She mean to you. She hitting on you," and I was lying. As a man, I was lying. I was lying. I was keeping it a secret. I was making her look good. She, her family's praising her. People around me are praising her. You're a good woman. But I never was a good man. She was a good woman. She was the princess. You take good care of her. You better not hurt her or we'll come after you. But they not knowing she hurting me. Well, who's going to tell me I'm the good person? Who's going to show me that genuine love of who I am? Who's going to, sometimes, you don't want to get validation from people, but sometimes you need a little validation, but then you have to give yourself validation as well. So, I say all that just, I pray that you, keep doing what you're doing and that you, see hope and that things change for your sister. And, with somebody like you around, you sound really strong. If she has somebody like you in her life, she'll find that strength to get out. She'll find it. She just has to find her own way right now. And you can't force it. You can't push it. You can't keep reiterating it to her. Like love is the key on that, honestly. And I hope I don't sound like insensitive or anything like that, but I'm really speaking to you from the heart, from experience and from being a 2-time survivor. I didn't hear it, and you have blinders on, like that Eve song, Love is Blind. It'll take over your mind, all that, so like I said, just keep pressing on, be encouraged and keep love in your heart, sweetheart, but yeah, just be in your sister's corner.
Thank you so much, Tony. And my last question for you guys. It's I just realized already 6 o'clock. That was a very good conversation. So my last question, as we having today to an end, what advice? I know we already talked about, advice to that person who knows somebody was dealing with violence, because that was gonna be one of my questions as well. But this one is, what words would you put out there to anybody who find themselves in abusive situation, who's dealing with domestic violence, partner violence? And like we mentioned earlier, everybody's at different level in their mind. Like we're dealing with so many different type of abuse, physical, financial, verbal, emotional, digital. So to anybody who's out there who's listening, whether or not they're ready or not to get out, whether or not they're in the process of living, what advice would you send out to them?
I can go first, since Terry always speak first. I'll speak first, if you don't mind. Oh, unless if you want to speak first.
No, perfectly fine with me.
Thank you, Terry. For me, the advice I can give them is to try to talk to people. You try to talk to people that can be a specialist, like a therapist, to get some help. But surround yourself with positive people, with people that you can trust. In my case, it did help me, and then try to do things that will give you a peace of mind. Don't try to get out of this relationship and try to get into another one quickly, because you don't have time to really heal, to know yourself, to understand what was happened, and then that's it. Find help, and if it gets physical, don't hesitate to call the police and press charge, because what people don't realize, by pressing charge, you keep an abusive man away, or an abusive woman away from doing things that you might not know they could have done. Usually when that happened, a lot of women will say that, oh, I never know he could hit me. It was the first time, he won't do that again. And then since that became an habit, then we realized that that was the nature of that person. So that's really my advice. Go get help. Surround yourself with great people, positive people. Talk about a specialist about it. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome. For that, I want to end with this advice for anyone, or if anyone who knows of anyone who's going through domestic violence at this time, I just want to say, you got this. And what I mean by that, you got this inner strength to realize that what you're in is not where you're meant to be. It's temporary. Everything in life is temporary. And you can walk out that situation if you choose to. However long you think and decide in your mind that, you're going to stay, and maybe you're going to go back a couple of times, because it takes sometimes several times to realize that this is not what you need. Just realize that you got this. You also got this external support from so many different resources that can help you, whether it's RAIN, whether it's, Beyond the Abuse, whether it's your family, whether it's, the fact that you have kids and you want a better life for your kids, and whether it's yourself. You got dreams, you got goals, you got hopes, you got a future. You got this. And once you keep telling yourself that you got this, then all manners of ancient magic will make things happen, because you took that path, you made a choice to move on and move out of that situation. So you got this. Okay.
My advice would be, when you say you want to leave, don't believe when they start making you promises, because they're just getting desperate to try and keep a hold of you. And that you're not alone. There's no form of abuse that's small, because that's something I would say to myself, oh, it wasn't that serious. Like, who would want to hear my story? But abuse is abuse. Nobody should have to go through that. And just always make sure that you have a safe space to go to. A coworker, a friend, anybody, your kid's teacher, whoever it is, a neighbor. Find somewhere that could be your safe space that you can talk to somebody, you can let them know what's going on, so that if anything ever happened to you and you're still in a situation, they know what's going on, or they can help you when you're trying to get out. So just those things are important. Those things are key. Just have a safe space and know that whatever you're going through is important, and somebody cares,
Thank you so much, everybody. Tommy, Gabiernaud, Terry, Christina, thank you for taking the time to be with us today and to share our story. Your story, sorry, our story. I'm a firm believer that stories are very powerful. They can heal, unify, and basically save people's life. And I truly hope that somebody who's listening will find strength in you sharing your story, and they'll find inspiration, and this will give them the booster that they need to realize, like you mentioned, Christina, they're not alone. We're never alone. Don't let your mind trick you into believing that you're the only person going through this particular situation at that time. There's a million of other people dealing with it, and hopefully you'll find the strength to speak up and speak out, and like many of you mentioned, to get help, get out, and we know it's a process, but we're hoping that listening to us today will kind of like make that process a little bit shorter, and help you get to that finish line. So thank you to everybody who join us, everybody will interact, ask questions. you can find Beyond the Abuse online on beyondtheabuse.org. And do not hesitate to reach out, to email us, to call for question, comment, concern. And me, I'm Joanne, and it was such a pleasure to be with you again today, this year for our second annual conference. And I really, 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 truly hope that we're able to impact life and change people's stories. And that's all I had today for you. And hopefully that's not the last time we'll see each other again, and we'll have the opportunity to do some more amazing work together. So thank you everybody who's joined. Thank you for watching, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.